Okay, let's talk about Unit 7, Lesson 2, Evaluating Exponential Functions. So if we want to evaluate exponential functions, evaluate means to substitute a known value. And then you have two options. You can do this by hand. So if you're doing this by hand, you want to remember the order of operations, which is PEMDAS. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division from left to right, addition and subtraction from left to right. You are also welcome to use a calculator. I will show you both methods. Okay, so let's look at the first example. They give you a function. Remember, g of n is just the name of the function. They want negative 3 times 2 to the exponent n plus 2. So they want g of 0, which means that x equals 0, or n. So since n equals 0, I can substitute that, and I would be left with negative 3 times 2 to the 0 plus 2 is 2. So if you're doing this by hand, you have to do the exponents first. So 2 squared is 4, the negative 3 stays, negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Okay? If you are using a calculator, you're going to type in negative 3 times 2 and then use the little caret button or the y to the x. Negative 3 to the 0 plus 2. And I know my screen is a little bit dark. And you notice we get the same answer. All right, let's look at the next example. So if this is g of x, find g of 1, which means that now our variable is x. So x equals 1. So I'm going to substitute 1. So I get 2 times 5. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Now, if you are doing this by hand, negative exponent is the reciprocal, which means that's 1/5. 2 times 1/5 is 2/5. If we type that in, I've got 2 times 5 to the 1 minus 2. Now, they tell us 0.4, which you can go ahead and leave your answer like that, or if I change it to a fraction, it is 2/5. But both answers are fully correct. All right, the last one, w, so that means that x equals negative 2. So negative 4 to the negative 2. Now, this one, if you're doing this by hand, please be careful. The negative is not in a parenthesis, so you need to do just the 4. This is like a negative 1 times 4 to the negative 2. So 4 squared is 16. The reciprocal is 1/16. So I would get negative 1/16 minus 3, which is, you can write it as a mixed number. You can write it as an improper, or the decimal, but I can't do the decimal in my head. Same thing, if you type it in a calculator, make sure you do not use parentheses. So negative 4 to the negative 2, and then minus 3. Okay, make sure they're all where they need to be on your calculator screen. So we get a decimal, and if I change that to a fraction, you'll notice it matches our answer. So either answers are acceptable. All right, the second topic is composition of functions. So composition is when you need to do two functions within each other. So typically it's written two different ways. So f of g of x, that's how you would say it. Or if you look online, you'll also see an open circle. And they mean the same thing. This course is going to use it in this notation. So the way that you evaluate it is you always do the inside function first. And then once you get a value for the inside function, then you're going to evaluate, so step 2 is you're going to evaluate the outside function. Second, which on the outside is f. Okay? So it's going to be a lot easier to show you. They're going to give you one function for f, one function for g, and they could be any kinds of functions. And the question says find f of g of 2. So I want to pay attention to the inside function, which is g of 2. And that's what we just did up above. So if I go to the g function, that means that I want x equals 2. So I'm going to substitute 2 for the x. So 3 squared minus 2. 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 2 gives me 7. That is the value for the entire inside. So really, by substitution, the question is now, what's f of 7? So I'm going to now, on my second step, I'm going to take the 7 in the f function, and I'm going to plug in x equals 7. So we get 2 to the 7th plus 1, which is 128. So 129. That's the overall value. You have one answer, but on your homework, I should see an answer for the first inside function, and I should see an answer for the last one. This is your final answer. This is your work. All right, let's try it again. So let's look at example 5. F and G, and so now I kind of reverse the order. So you want to pay attention. On the inside, we want to find f of 1. So I'm going to go to the f function, and I want to know when x equals 1, what's the value of the f function. So we get 2 to the 1 minus 8, which is negative 6. So this value is negative 6. I still have the g function since we haven't evaluated that. So now I go to the g function, and I know x is negative 6. So 2 to the negative 6 plus 10. If you use a calculator, you're going to get a really small decimal, which is okay, plus 10, and we add them together.